So you're a very sporty individual and you're looking for some eyewear. Well, stick around. I have some thoughts for you. Hello and welcome. I'm Eyeglass Tyler. I want to help you with picking out the right pair for your sports sunglasses. If you don't know where to start, then I think that this can help quite a bit. What I'm going to be talking about is helping you with frame selection and then helping you with lens selection. I think that lenses can oftentimes get overlooked. I think people tend to just want something that's good and wrapped and looks cool, and they think that the lenses don't matter as much as long as they're blocking light transmission. Well, I think it can actually be a performance enhancing tool. So I think that that is a factor that is important to consider as well. So I will be going over that. If by the end of this you feel much more confident in what you want to order, then I've done my job. And if you decide to order, do not forget about SportRx, and also don't forget about our See Better guarantee. With that, you have as long as 45 days with them, even if you get them in prescription. And if you still have issues with them, we take care of you no matter what that means on our end. And also, we have opticians, very knowledgeable and very friendly, and who would love to help you get it right the first time. So reach out to us. In the meantime, let's talk about this. Okay, so what should you look for in a frame? Well, obviously you want to get the right fit. If you're looking online, do make sure that if you're checking out frame reviews from us, we like to always include fit information. What we call it is the SFW. That's a SportRx frame width. That gives you a better idea of how it's actually going to fit, rather than just the measurements of each lens and the bridge and the temple length, which doesn't always give you a good idea of how it's going to fit. That SFW, I think, gives you a really good idea of what to expect with how it's going to work for your face. Obviously, you want to make sure that they stay on your face. You're going to be active, whatever sport it is you're going to be taking part in. You want to make sure that they stay on your face. And so grip tends to be a really good idea. I usually like to find grip on the temples and in the nose bridge. Sometimes there's frames that are great for sports that don't have both, or maybe not even either. But again, we usually include that information on individual frame reviews, and so check those out. Another thing to consider is lightweight. You, of course, don't want to have to think. I think the best thing that you can say about a pair of sport glasses is that you put them on and you forget that they're there. You shouldn't have to be worrying about your glasses, worrying about anything on your face while you're taking part in whatever sport you're participating in, because it's a distraction. You don't want to have to deal with that. And so some materials to keep in mind are more generically the Grilamids, the TR90s, more specifically, for example, which I believe is kind of a proprietary version of these better materials, is Oakley, their O-Matter frame material. These are going to be very strong, very flexible, very durable, and of course, very lightweight. I tend to like to give the advice to avoid metal frames. I don't think that metal frames really have much place in sport use. There are some exceptions to this, certainly, like the Ride-On, for instance. It is one of my favorite frames for just general sport uses. It actually does have a little bit of metal in the temple, but the frame front is a good quality TR90 or Grillamid. I should know the answer to this, but either way, frame material. And so again, lightweight, very durable, really good options. But with metal frames, you tend to have weld points. You tend to have usually heavier frames and more susceptible to breaking. So I tend to not like metal frames for sport use. Another thing to consider is helmet or hat compatibility with the temples. This is kind of an honorable mention because it might not always be an issue, but I do think that there are some frames that find themselves as being much better for sport use, thanks to that just extra thought behind helmet and hat compatibility in the temples, and even sometimes in the frame design. So keep an eye out for those. I would say that if you like a good wrapped frame, you need to be a little more careful for how it fits on your bridge, because if it sits really close to your face, you're going to have some issues with fogging, especially if you need prescription and it already in non-prescription sits pretty close to your face. The prescription lenses are going to add thickness, and there's a lot to consider there for sure. Again, our opticians are a great resource. Use us. Also vented. There's a lot of technology coming out right now with different venting concepts and different venting technologies. Some are in the frame, some are in the lenses, whether it be a hole drilled into the lens to offer more venting, or maybe it's in the nose bridge design. There are lots of different options there. Again, this is something that we like to point out in our frame reviews. that's something that's, again, going to help minimize fogging. Another thing that I tend to really like is interchangeability. And that's something both of these guys have. With an interchangeable lens functionality, then you can have multiple sets of lenses for multiple light conditions or multiple sports to cater best to those different activities. It just gives you a little more versatility. And then you don't have to have multiple complete frames. You can have different sets of lenses for the one frame. So convenience and functionality, everything in there for an interchangeable setup for sure. Now let's talk about lenses. I love talking about lenses. It's kind of my favorite thing, especially if you're talking prescription. There's so many options out there and it gets a little overwhelming. Generally speaking, I almost always recommend contrast enhancement. I don't know that I can think of any scenario where contrast enhancement is going to hurt you. There are definitely times that people prefer no contrast for certain sports, like let's say deep sea fishing. People tend to like something that's a gray with a blue mirror. I don't know if it's just because that's what the popular lenses have been designed for, or if they just tend to like neutral color perception, but I tend to find that contrast enhancement is better for just about every sport scenario. Also, it's a good idea to get impact resistant lenses because you're going to be active. There's a chance that you could be hit in the face with a projectile, a ball, I don't know, whatever it is that you're taking part in. Impact resistance is a really good idea. The lens materials you want to look at there would be polycarbonates, and Trivex is actually my favorite. That's a newer lens material when you compare it to how long polycarbonate's been around for. And now we're kind of talking more prescription stuff. It's probably going to be fairly difficult to find a non-prescription Trivex lens. I'm sure they're out there. But it's not as readily available information. But for the most part, when you're looking at frames like these, they're going to have impact resistant lenses, but just keep that in the back of your mind. Make sure that that's something you double check on. And while we're talking about impact resistant, what you don't want to get is glass. Again, it depends on the sport. There can be, so fishing again comes to mind. There are like Costa, for instance, their glass lenses are incredible and amazing because they're nice and scratch resistant. However, they're not impact resistant. They can crack, they can shatter. They also tend to be much heavier. So if you are in an activity or a sport where you're moving a lot more, that added weight is definitely going to start to weigh you down, and they're not going to be as safe. And so just as a general rule, I usually recommend avoiding glass. Now, when it comes to some lens features, I usually recommend avoiding polarized for just about every ball sport. There are some caveats here, but for the most part, I think that you're better off without polarized lenses for ball sports because, for one, you're not really getting a ton of benefit from the polarized during the sport. So if you're playing baseball or football or soccer or tennis, whatever it is that you're playing, there's usually not a lot of glare bouncing off of the objects in those environments. And so you're not benefiting much from that polarized feature. But also it can be a downside because the way that the polarized works, it cuts light transmission in one plane, which is a horizontal axis, and that can actually affect your depth perception, which is really not great for when you have a fast moving ball that you're trying to keep track of. So I usually discourage people getting polarized for ball sports. A thing to consider would be a mirror coating. That's a very popular lens feature for just about every sport, I would say, out there. The mirror coating is a coating applied to the front of the lens. It's going to help to actually create more glare, more reflections off of the surface of the lens, which means that you're getting less light making it to your eye. So this is a good option if you're looking for blocking more light transmission, getting a darker lens, or helping with a thing I call ambient glare. That's light coming in at harsher angles. If you've messed with lights on a mirror before, you know that the light will more readily bounce off of the mirror with the harsher the angle. And that light coming into your eyes at that harsh of an angle tends to be less usable anyway. So there is that benefit to a mirror coating as well. Also, you can make them look cool. You can get different colors. You can get different mirror densities. And so that's another feature that people tend to like for functional, optical, and cosmetic reasons. Another thing to consider is photochromic lenses. Photochromic would be like your transitions lenses, the lenses that are light reactive. This might not be good for every sport out there, but it is generally a pretty good option for somebody looking for a little more versatility. If you are in a sport or activity that has more variations in light and you want something that gives you a little more versatility, maybe your motorcycle, maybe you're cycling at dusk and getting a little darker, or early in the morning and it gets a little brighter, you don't have to swap out lenses. Even if you have that interchangeable functionality in your glasses, it is nice to not have to stop and swap lenses. You can keep the same pair on. There are some caveats to wearing photochromic as well. This is a tough video because there are so many variables out there, but I've done many videos on transitions and photochromic that you can check out for a little more deep dive on that and what to expect. But as a general rule, I like photochromic for sport use. Hey, if you're liking this content, but maybe you have additional questions about sports sunglasses, or perhaps you have prescription needs, well, be sure to reach out to one of our very friendly and knowledgeable SportRx opticians because they're eagerly awaiting your call. And for even more sunglass frame reviews, unboxings, prescription sport content, check out our videos on our blogs. We'll put a link in the description below. Well, that wraps it up for Tyler's hot tips for what you need to know when choosing sports sunglasses. I hope that you feel a little more confident in your selections or how to approach this. Now, again, don't forget about our See Better guarantee. If you're ready to buy, if you're ready to order, I think that it's an amazing peace of mind. I think it really does help give you confidence in what you're ordering and that you're never going to be stuck with something that you don't like. Also, our opticians, why the heck would you not use us? Because we'd love to help you get it right the first time. And we also just like to hear from you. So reach out to us. Thank you so much for watching. I really hope this was interesting or valuable information. If so, throw us a like because it helps us a lot. You can find relevant videos over here. And also we have great content on our social media outlets. And I think you should check us out there too, because I think you'd like it. You can find us at SportRx.